There are those of us, and Anya and I met several years ago in 2017, where I brought together people who were interested in this idea of reimagining global governance, and I'm not a blockchain person, to come together and consider how we might form a community. That's why I'm very fascinated by your ideas. A community that was working together to be mutual solidarity and mutually cooperative and across jurisdictions. And I mean, we are still in that community working today, and it's has been a very interesting journey, but it's about us grappling with this exact same thing. How do we lead ourselves if we want to walk away from the top-down centralized governance model that we know is not working for the vast majority of us? But how do we actually achieve things together without some leadership element? And the balance that we struck is we took a model looking at cells and how cells govern themselves, and so we were looking at a leader full model or service kind of leadership model, where if you're performing a particular kind of function, then you're responsible to the community in the context of that function. It's like a service to the community as opposed to a leader in the community. But so I looked at these templates that you've created for all these different types of communities, community rules, different ways in which we can govern ourselves as communities. And I was fascinated. I thought it was incredible. How did you come up with this? Where did you, these templates and all that sort of thing? Because you're not a lawyer. So I want to know, how did you come up with these models and the templates that you have there?
Well, so this project, Community Rule, has come out of something I've been involved in over the last year, which really started out with my own experience as an organizer in online platforms and in online communities. So, for instance, I moderate an email list for the platform co-op community, which has about 500 people on it. And as we started to encounter problems, I realized, wow, the tools we have for governance in online platforms like Facebook groups and email lists and open source communities, these are really terrible tools for even doing the basic stuff. And I kept meanwhile, I was having conversations with my mother, who was in the process of kind of finding her way into this garden club in her community, right? And I was just always blown away. Like, I'm thinking about these online platforms, they're so much, their governance is so much weaker than what my mother's garden club does, just as a matter of course. How could we just like catch the Facebook group up with the garden club? And so this has taken a number of forms. I'm now part of a research project called the Meta Governance Project, where we're trying to create a really ambitious, non-blockchain protocol layer for governance for the internet, and all this stuff. And that's going to be many years to come to fruition. But I still felt like, okay, these communities really need to just even have some basic rules on hand. And so Community Rule is an effort to create a kind of quick and dirty way for communities to adopt a kind of basic constitution layer for themselves, so that when difficult challenges arise, they have something to turn to, and they're not just flailing or reverting to a kind of feudalism, which is what I think the default really is in our online community. So as part of this, I've been building, in order to do this, I've been building this tool and have a few of these templates sketched out about that are basically designed to be starting points for groups.
So you created them? You created them, Nathan?
I did, and based on just different models that I've encountered in my in my research and in my personal experience. The goal is not to be innovative. The goal is to take kind of the basic patterns that we tend to see and just make them more explicit. That the target for me is what the 1970s feminist activist Joe Freeman talked about as the tyranny of structurelessness. If nothing else, even if your group is going to be, a top-down hierarchical, feudal mess, let's at least just make it explicit so everybody knows what we're talking about here. That, to me, even that would be a tremendous advance on where we are today.
It's interesting you mentioned explicitly. One thing is actually to just make the foundations available to everyone so that everybody understands what the rules actually are. That's how we communicate the Constitution to everybody, just make it available. Everybody has the access to it. That's definitely one of the rules. I'm actually interested because you do have the word stewardship on the website. So one thing is to make these templates available, and one thing is to make these rules, but the other thing is to communicate those rules and everything with the whole community. So I'm kind of curious, how does the stewardship look like here?
Well, I'm trying to find language that is as generalizable as possible across these different models. And I don't feel satisfied with all of the terms we're using right now. And I think we're going to find ways to develop them. Really, above all, I'm thinking a lot, one model that I have in mind is Creative Commons, which is, we're a tool that allows you to select from a fairly small number of licenses and adopt one for the content that you're creating. I want to make it as simple as possible for people to step in and, pick a rule, adopt it, and then ignore it until they need it. And the term stewardship is really just based on identifying who is in charge of making sure that the rules we've agreed on actually get carried out. That's the kind of executive function, essentially, if we think of it in a government sense. And I just think it's that role, like all these other roles, are just really important to make explicit, so that people know, who is going to be enforcing these rules and who's accountable for enforcing these rules we've agreed on. These basic questions are often missing from our networked communities, to their peril. We rely so much on the mechanism of exit. If you don't like it, you can leave, rather than a mechanism of voice and accountability.